Friday night in Chicago was warm, with a light breeze blowing off Lake Michigan. On the 62nd floor of the Lakeview Tower skyscraper, the restaurant was buzzing with the voices of guests, the clinking of glasses, and muffled jazz music. The hall was filled with people in expensive suits and dresses, moving between the tables, exchanging smiles and handshakes. Behind the huge windows lay the city, a scattering of lights reflected in the dark water of the lake. Logan Wells stood at the bar, holding a glass of bourbon in his hand. At 42, he looked fit. Dark hair with slight gray at the temples, neatly styled, a dark blue tailored suit, and attentive brown eyes that rarely missed detail. He was the owner of Wells Design, the architectural firm that designed half of the new buildings in downtown Chicago. His face often appeared in local magazines, next to headlines about charity projects or new skyscrapers. But now he was just a guest at a reception organized to raise funds for the city museum. Logan took a sip of his bourbon, feeling the warmth spread through his chest. He looked around the room, looking for his wife. Avery Wells, 38, stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a small group of people. Her champagne-colored dress emphasized her slender figure, and her dark brown hair was pulled back into a low bun. She smiled, tilting her head slightly, while one of the guests, an elderly man in a tuxedo, was talking about something. Avery was an art curator whose gallery in River North was considered one of the best in the city. Logan looked at her, and for a second a smile touched his lips. She always knew how to keep attention. "Logan, are you hiding at the bar again?" a voice said nearby. He turned around. Nathan Crow, his best friend since college, stood with a glass of wine in his hand. Nathan was a couple of years younger, with disheveled blonde hair and light stubble. His dark gray suit was slightly wrinkled, as if he hadn't bothered to iron it. Nathan worked as a financial consultant, but his reputation as a playboy often overshadowed his professional accomplishments. "I'm not hiding," Logan replied, shrugging. "Just observing." "Well, yes, of course," Nathan grinned. "You are always observing. Relax, old man. This is a charity, not a board meeting." Logan chuckled, but didn't argue. Nathan was right. He rarely relaxed at these events. Too many people, too much talk about money and connections. He preferred his work drawings, calculations, moments when an idea turned into reality. "Where's Avery?" Nathan asked, looking around the room. "Over there," Logan nodded towards his wife. "Entertain sponsors." Nathan followed his gaze, and Logan saw the corner of his mouth twitch. It was not a smile, but something else fleeting, almost imperceptible. Logan frowned, but quickly pushed the thought away. He had known Nathan for 20 years. They shared beers in the dorm, covered each other up in front of professors, even went fishing together in Wisconsin. Nathan was a part of his life, almost like a brother. "She's in her element," Nathan said, taking a sip of wine. "You know, she always knew how to get a crowd going." "That's true," Logan agreed, but his voice was a little quieter than usual. He looked back at Avery. She laughed, touching the hand of the man in the tuxedo. The gesture was light and professional, but Logan felt a pang of irritation. He knew that it was her job to be charming, to attract attention to her projects. But something in her movements, in the way she tilted her head, seemed too personal to him. "I'll go say hello," Nathan said, putting his glass on the counter. "We need to remind the sponsors that I'm here too." Logan nodded, watching as Nathan walked towards Avery. He walked confidently, with that slight arrogance that always attracted people to him. As Nathan approached, Avery turned to him and her smile widened. They exchanged a few words, and Logan noticed how their eyes met longer than necessary. Nathan said something and Avery laughed, throwing her head back slightly. Logan gripped his glass a little tighter. "Mr. Wells?" a voice said nearby. Logan turned around. A young woman in a black dress stood in front of him, holding a tablet. Her badge read, "Claire, event organizer." "Yes," he answered, forcing himself to smile. "I wanted to clarify whether you will give a speech. We can give you 5 minutes before the auction." Logan shook his head. "No, thank you, Claire. I'm here only as a guest. Let the museum take all the attention." "I understand," she nodded, But if you change your mind, let me know. Your name always attracts generous donations. I'll think about it, Logan said, although he knew he wouldn't change his mind. Claire walked away and Logan looked back at Avery and Nathan. They were still standing together, a little closer than the others in their group. Nathan leaned over to Avery, speaking into her ear, and she nodded, still smiling. Logan felt something heavy move in his chest. He tried to brush it off. "You're tired," he said to himself. "It's just evening, just talking." "Logan," Avery called out, waving her hand. Her voice rang through the light hubbub of the party, and he immediately looked up, catching a familiar intonation like a warm note in the cacophony of small talk. He forced himself to smile. The smile was strained, almost mechanical, but it seemed to work. The guests, noticing him, nodded in a friendly manner. Someone even extended their hand and said phrases like, "Good to see you, Logan." "Great suit." He nodded in response, but the faces merged into an indistinct mass, as if he was walking through a dream where everything around him seemed slightly blurry. As he approached, Avery easily took his arm. She wore an evening dress made of dark green silk, perfectly emphasizing the curves of her figure. Her hand was warm and confident. "You missed the whole fun part," she said with a slight grin, looking at him sideways. "Mr. Rosenberg has just finished talking about his treasured impressionists. It turned out he had a genuine Monet." "Sounds exciting." Logan turned his gaze to the elderly man next to him. He had a noble bearing, gray hair neatly combed back, and his eyes sparkled with that intelligent sparkle inherent in collectors with history. "Mr. Rosenberg, good to see you." "And I'm glad." Logan. Rosenberg shook his hand with unexpected firmness. "Your wife turned out to be a real art hunter. She persuaded me to donate a couple of paintings to a charity auction. No gallery owner can be convinced like that." "This is her talent," Logan chuckled, glancing at Avery. She answered with a light but slightly forced smile. However, her eyes immediately slid to the side to the other side of the hall, where Nathan was talking, leaning on a high table. He laughed animatedly, clicked his cufflinks, surrounded by a couple of women and some young architect. Logan noted this movement of his gaze, like a person noticing the smallest cracks in perfectly polished glass. His fingers clenched involuntarily. He knew it was stupid. Knew. But this did not cancel the feeling that pinched under the ribs, as if someone was slowly turning a knife. "Avery, do you mind if I steal Logan for a minute?" A familiar voice rang out. Nathan came up behind Logan, clapping him on the shoulder a little harder than necessary. "We need to discuss an idea for work." "Certainly," Avery said with a slight laugh, letting go of Logan's hand. "But don't keep him too long. We have a couple more surprises for the evening." "I promise to return you safe and sound." Nathan winked. Logan caught the wink and felt his jaw tense. Too friendly, too easy. It was as if there was something between the lines that he did not yet understand. They went to the window. Here, near the panoramic glass, the noise of the party sounded like a distant surf booming, but inaudible. Through the glass, there was a view of the city lights, neon signs, running headlights, reflections in glass facades. Nathan leaned against the window, clasping his hands behind his back. "So what is the project?" Logan asked, trying to keep his voice even. "Nothing serious," Nathan shrugged, looking into the distance. "There is one client. I wanted to build an office in Lupe. The area is strange, but promising. I thought maybe your company would take it on." "Send me details," Logan answered briefly. "We'll see if anything happens. We'll discuss it on Monday." In fact, he barely heard what he was saying. His thoughts revolved around one thing: what has changed in Nathan. It seems that the same voice, the same ease of movement, even a slight carelessness in the tie, everything is as always. But something new appeared in my eyes. Something slippery. A look that seemed to know more than it said. Or did he talk more than he should? "Listen, are you okay?" Nathan suddenly asked, narrowing his eyes. "You look like you just saw a wedding bill, or someone stole your bourbon." "Everything is fine," Logan said, and took a sip from his glass to hide his tension. The wine was dry, slightly tart. "There is a lot of work. Projects, deadlines. You know how it goes. Well then, relax, friend. Nathan said with the same ease and clapped him on the shoulder again. You're not made of iron. Take a break. I'll go find some more wine. Don't get lost. He turned around and walked back into the hall. Logan watched him go and then looked out the window again at the lights of the big city, flickering like signals alarming and unclear. He left, and Logan remained at the window, looking at the city lights. His gaze found Avery again. She was standing with another group, but now her eyes met Nathan's across the hall. It only took a second, but Logan noticed. His heart sank. He tried to convince himself that it didn't mean anything. They are friends, they communicate often. But the shadow of doubt he had felt earlier in the evening began to grow. Logan, are you coming? Avery approached, her voice breaking him out of his thoughts. The auction will start soon. We need to take our seats. Yes, of course, he nodded, placing the glass on the tray of a passing waiter. They walked to the table and Avery took his arm. Her touch was warm, familiar, but Logan couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. He sat down next to her, listening to the host announce the start of the auction, but his mind was far away. He looked at Avery, at Nathan a few tables away, and tried to figure out what he had missed. The evening continued, but for Logan, it was no longer just a reception. This was the moment when his world began to fall apart at the seams. Saturday morning in Chicago, it dawned gray and humid. Low clouds, heavy and motionless, hung over Lake Michigan, as if they were preparing to rain, but never decided to do so. The city looked faded without highlights, without contrasts, as if everything had lost its clarity overnight. Logan Wells woke up not to a sound, but to a feeling of slight uneasiness that smolders inside before you even realize it. He lay staring at the ceiling as the thought of the day of the week slowly returned. Saturday. The surrounding room was spacious, but now seemed strangely empty. Everything in it reminded him of angular furniture, restrained colors, glass and metal. Everything was thoughtful and precise, like an architectural model. The Lincoln Park home he designed himself was not luxurious, it was neat. No frills, but with intention. However, now there was a coolness in this neatness. He sat down on the edge of the bed. Behind the windows, almost the entire wall, a garden dimly appeared wet branches, pale grass, gray-tiled paths. No movement, no sound. Even the wind seemed tired. Everything about this morning was a little different. Not bad, just alien. Avery wasn't there. She was out for a run, like she did every Saturday. He heard her quietly close the door around 7 in the morning, her footsteps fading on the stairs. Usually he got up with her and made coffee, but today he stayed lying down, turning over last night in his head. Reception at Lakeview Tower, Avery's smiles, Nathan's glances. He tried to convince himself that it was all nonsense, but the feeling that something was wrong did not go away. Logan reached for the phone on the nightstand. The screen showed 8:47 am. He opened his messages to check his email, but his eyes fell on Avery's phone, lying on her side of the bed. She often forgot him when she went for a run, and Logan usually didn't pay attention to it. But today his fingers hovered over her phone. He knew the password. They never hid such things from each other. It was part of their marriage, trust, openness. But last night changed everything. He picked up the phone, feeling like he was doing something forbidden. The screen lit up and Logan entered the code. Open the messages. The first thing that caught my eye was a notification from a contact with the initial N. The message read, "Meet me at 3, like yesterday." Below was a photo, Avery and Nathan in a cafe, sitting at a table by the window. Avery smiled. Her hand lay on the table, almost touching Nathan's hand. Logan stared at the screen, feeling the blood pounding in his temples. He scrolled up, but there were no other messages from N, just this one, sent last night. He put the phone back, trying to breathe evenly. It could be anything. Business lunch. Nathan often met with Avery through work. She attracted his clients for her gallery projects. But why then N and not Nathan? And why did this photo look so close? Logan stood up, went into the bathroom, and washed his face with cold water. The reflection in the mirror showed a man with dark circles under his eyes. He looked older than his 42 years. Downstairs in the kitchen, Logan turned on the coffee maker. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the room, but even that couldn't help the tightness in his chest. He sat at the island, looking at his phone, and opened up his gallery to distract himself. There were photos from the previous weekend. Him and Avery on a walk by the lake, her face laughing, his arm around her waist. It all seemed so normal. He closed the app and stared out the window, where it was starting to rain. The door slammed and Avery walked in, out of breath, wearing black leggings and a sports jacket. Her cheeks were flushed from running, her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail. "Good morning," Avery said, taking off her sneakers at the entrance. They were wet around the edges. Apparently, she was running along the morning embankment. "Are you up yet? I thought you'd be lying around until 10. "I couldn't sleep," Logan answered without turning around right away. His voice was even, but a little more muffled than usual. "Will you have some coffee?" Yeah, with pleasure she headed towards the kitchen, took out a glass from the cabinet, and turned on the tap. The sound of water filled the short pause. She took several large sips and, exhaling, wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. "On the street like in a steam room. It seems like I've only been running for 15 minutes, but I feel like I'm wet through and through." Logan took her favorite mug from the cabinet, fine china, snow white, with an almost worn gold rim, and silently poured coffee. He placed it on the table in front of her. She sat down, clasped her mug in her palms as if she was warming herself, although it was not cold in the room. "Are you okay?" she asked, looking at him over the headband, narrowing her eyes slightly. "You look like you haven't slept at all." "Didn't sleep well." "Yeah," he shrugged and looked down at the cup in his hands. "I don't know, I'm just a mess in my head after yesterday." "Well, the evening was not easy," she nodded, taking the first careful sip. "But it seems everything went well. The museum was pleased. Rosenberg even promised to give a couple more works for the next auction." "It's good that it's not in vain," he muttered. Pause. He looked at her, but his gaze was slightly absent-minded, as if through glass. Then he added quietly, "You talked a lot with Nathan yesterday." She blinked, leaned back slightly, raising her eyebrows, but didn't look surprised. "Well, yes. He was there. He came over. We were just talking. He said something about a client who wants to support the gallery or something like that. Nothing special. I just noticed that you were around most of the evening." Logan spoke slowly, as if searching for words, afraid that any would sound wrong. "That's it." She lowered her mug. There was no sharpness in her movement, but it became noticeable how the air between them thickened slightly. "Are you jealous now, or is this a security question?" she asked without raising her voice, but her tone became a little drier. "No." He rubbed the bridge of his nose with his fingers. I don't know, probably a little jealous, probably paranoia. Paranoia would be if you asked if I was sleeping with him. In the meantime, you just look stressed." She looked at him carefully, bowing her head slightly. "Logan, we were at a public event. With people, with journalists, with philanthropists. I did what I had to do. I spoke, I smiled, I attracted money. This is all." He nodded and lowered his eyes. For several seconds, they simply sat in silence, listening to the wood creaking subtly from the wind outside the window. "You work hard," she said a little more quietly. "Sometimes you start to see something that isn't there. And I'm nearby, just nearby. Don't make a drama out of it, okay?" He didn't answer immediately. Then he exhaled hoarsely. "Maybe I'm really overthinking it. Sorry, just after that message." Avery tensed, but quickly pulled herself together. She took another sip of coffee and stood up. "I'll go take a shower. I have a meeting at 2 today. We need to prepare some more things. Will you be home?" "No, I'm going to stop by Madison's." She asked me to help her with the text. I think she has a new article, something about private investors. "Say hi to her," she said, already halfway up the stairs. She stopped and looked over her shoulder. "And Logan, really, don't push it too hard. Okay? We're in the same boat. Don't forget this." He nodded, too quickly, as if he wanted to put an end to it. but inside everything continued to ring. When she left, he remained sitting, looking at the empty mug in front of him. The walls of the kitchen, so familiar, seemed for a moment foreign, and neither coffee nor reason helped because he still had this dull, sticky feeling that something was slipping away. Madison Wells's apartment was in the West Loop, in an old loft with brick walls and tall windows. She was 32, and she was the exact opposite of Logan. A rebel, a journalist, always in jeans and sneakers, with dark hair casually pulled into a bun. Her writing on City Hall corruption and Chicago's environmental issues often sparked controversy, but Logan was proud of her courage, even if he didn't always understand her choices. He knocked on the door, holding a paper bag of donuts from her favorite bakery. Madison opened it, wearing a t-shirt with the logo of some rock festival and a laptop under her arm. "Oh, you brought food." Madison grinned, grabbing a paper bag with the logo of a local diner from him. "Come in, savior. Without you, I probably would have eaten my own keyboard." Logan crossed the threshold. The apartment was still the same, as if an intellectual hurricane had exploded inside. There were stacks of books on the floor, some open. On the windowsill there are mugs with dried coffee. Near the wall there is a board with pieces of paper and threads, like in investigation films. Somewhere an old fan hummed. The air smelled of dusty paper and something fried. "It's like you haven't left here since Tuesday," he said, walking into the living room. Maybe she didn't go out, she threw over her shoulder and plopped down on the sofa, throwing her feet up on the coffee table. "I'm on a mission." He sat down in the chair opposite, watching her unwrap the foil. "Well, what's wrong with your article?" "I'm digging under one construction company. They got a city contract for the improvement of a park, and somehow it was done suspiciously quickly and smoothly." She took a bite of the donut and spoke with her mouth full. "They have no history of major projects, but suddenly BAM financing, connections with the deputy mayor, and a contract for $7 million. It smells like something rotten." She washed it down with a sip from a can of Coke that had been placed on the floor. "Why are you so gloomy?" Madison narrowed her eyes. "You haven't said a word since you came in. Usually you start by criticizing my mug storage system." "I'm not gloomy." "You always say that when you're gloomy. What's happened? Did Avery make you sit next to a fondue fountain for 3 hours and talk about heritage values again?" Logan smiled at the corner of his lips, but quickly faded. "No, that's not the point." He fell silent and rubbed his neck. "Just yesterday, at the reception, Avery was with Nathan. I don't know, they were acting strange." Madison stopped chewing and her face became more serious. "How strange? Are you talking about tension? Or, on the contrary, is it too comfortable?" "Second." He looked out the window. They were standing too close, laughing as if everything around them had ceased to exist. "And this morning, I saw a message. From her. From N. There was a photo of them in a cafe, and the text something about meeting at 3. "A photo?" Madison slowly placed the donut on the napkin. "Are you sure this isn't some kind of group communication or business message?" "Don't know. It seems to be just a photo of the two of them. And this cafe looks completely informal. You know, not as a place for a business meeting." She nodded quietly, thinking it over. "Listen, I saw them a couple of weeks ago. In a cafe in Milwaukee. They sat in the corner, seemingly trying not to be conspicuous. They laughed and chatted. Not flirting, but it looked cozy, like home." He tensed and leaned forward a little. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't know what to say, Logan." She spread her hands. "You are my friend, yes, but I am not your spy. I didn't want to get into personal matters for no reason. And then I thought, well, maybe they're just friends. They work together, hang out. You said yourself that they have known each other since college." "I know." He ran his hand over his face. "But this feels different. It's like something is happening behind my back. And when I tried to talk to her about it, she simply said that I was making things up." "Well, of course," she said. Madison rolled her eyes. "This is a classic self-defense maneuver. It's all in your head." She looked at him long and seriously. "Look, I don't want to turn you against her, okay? Maybe you are a little paranoid. Maybe you aren't. But if you're already starting to have this doubt inside you, it's not going to go away. You either have to shut it down or dig into it. I just don't want to make a tragedy out of it if there's nothing, Logan muttered. I understand. But guessing isn't living, Logan. It's gut-wrenching. You're not the type to sit here and swallow this. Figure it out. Talk it out. Test it, whatever. But don't pretend it's okay if you don't believe it is. He nodded. He looked at the pattern on the carpet for a long time, as if searching for an answer in it. Thank you, Mad. Please. And by the way, she winked, taking her donut back. Next time bring 2-1 with filling, 1 without. Otherwise, of course, I share the stress with you, but sweets must also be shared. He chuckled. Briefly, but truly. Logan nodded, but everything was boiling inside. He wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that Avery and Nathan were just friends. But Madison's words, the photograph, yesterday's views, everything added up to a picture that he did not want to see. He said goodbye to his sister, promising to come by next week, and went outside. The rain picked up and Logan turned up his coat collar as he walked toward the car. His phone vibrated with a message from Avery. I'll be at the gallery until evening. Dinner at home? He responded with a short, okay, but his fingers were shaking. The crack he noticed yesterday was getting wider, and Logan didn't know how to stop it. It was a cool morning in Chicago, with light fog settling over Lake Michigan. Logan Wells was driving along Lakeshore Drive toward his mother's mansion in suburban Evanston. His black SUV hummed softly as trees and expensive houses flashed past the window. Avery sat next to her, scrolling through something on her phone. Her dark green dress looked formal but elegant, and her hair was loose, lightly touching her shoulders. Logan glanced at her, but she didn't look up. They had hardly spoken since the morning, and the silence in the car seemed heavier than usual. Are you okay? Logan asked, looking at the road. Avery looked up from her phone and looked at him. Yes, everything is fine. Her voice was even, but without the usual warmth. Just getting ready for this dinner. You know how Catherine likes to be in control. I know, Logan nodded, squeezing the steering wheel a little tighter. But she asked to come. She said she wanted to discuss something about the fund. Avery chuckled, turning back to the phone. The foundation, of course. She just wants us all to sit around the table and look like the perfect family. Logan didn't answer. He knew Avery was right. Catherine Wells, his 70-year-old mother, was a woman to whom reputation meant everything. Her philanthropic foundation supporting education and the arts was known throughout Chicago, and she was proud that the Wells family was considered a model of success. But behind this facade, there was always a tense relationship, especially with Madison, his younger sister, who hated these gatherings. They pulled up to the mansion, a large Georgian house with white columns and a perfectly manicured lawn. Logan parked, and he and Avery got out of the car. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and dampness from the morning fog. Avery straightened her dress before ringing the doorbell. Catherine opened the door. Her silver hair was styled in a neat bun, and her dark blue suit looked like it had just been delivered from the tailor. She smiled, but her eyes remained cold, assessing. Logan, Avery, good to see you, she said, stepping back to let them pass. Come on in, Madison is already here. Thank you, Catherine, Avery nodded, her smile polite but reserved. Logan hugged his mother, feeling her thin shoulders tense under his hands. She was always reserved, even at such moments. How are you, Mom? He asked, taking off his coat. Everything is fine, Catherine replied, leading them to the dining room. The foundation is preparing a new project for schools, but we'll talk about it at the table. The dining room was spacious, with a high ceiling and a crystal chandelier casting reflections on the polished oak table. Madison was already sitting there, wearing a black turtleneck and jeans, a stark contrast to the formal setting. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and she had a cup of coffee in front of her. Hey, Logan, Madison looked up, grinning. Avery, you are gorgeous as always. Thank you, Madison, Avery smiled, sitting down opposite her. You too, in your own style. Madison rolled her eyes, but her smile remained. Well, someone has to relieve this boredom. Logan sat down next to Avery, feeling the tension in the room rise. Catherine took her place at the head of the table, her posture impeccable. The maid, a young woman named Lena, appeared and began serving food: baked salmon, rosemary potatoes, and nut salad. Logan noticed that Avery had barely touched her plate, picking at the salad with a fork. So, Catherine began, cutting off a piece of salmon, I wanted to discuss our participation in the next charity ball. Logan, I'm counting on Wells Design to be one of the major sponsors. Logan nodded, expecting this conversation. No problem. I'll talk to accounting and we'll allocate the amount. As usual. Yes, but this year I want you and Avery to be on stage. Catherine looked at Avery. Your gallery should also be represented. This will strengthen our image. Avery put down her fork, her face remaining calm. I'll think about it, Catherine. I have a lot of work to do right now with the new exhibition, but I will try. Try? Catherine raised an eyebrow. Avery, this is important. The Wells family always supports such events. This is not just charity, it is our duty. Madison snorted, taking a sip of her coffee. Duty? Seriously, Mom? Maybe stop making us into a royal family. Catherine gave her a cold look. Madison, if you ever thought about your reputation and not about your articles, you would understand what I mean. Oh, believe me, I understand. Madison leaned back in her chair. You want us all to smile and bow while you give instructions. But I gave up. I have more important things to do. Logan felt the familiar tension thicken. He knew Madison and Catherine never got along. Madison hated everything related to the family image, and Catherine saw her rebellion as a threat to her world. Let's not start, Logan said, trying to diffuse the situation. Mom, I'll talk to Avery. We'll figure out something for the ball. Madison, how was your article? Yesterday you talked about some kind of contract. Madison looked at him, her eyes softening slightly. While I'm digging, there are a couple of leads, but nothing concrete. These guys from the construction company are as slippery as eels. Maybe you should be more careful, Catherine interjected, her voice sharp. Your articles have already caused problems. Do you remember how they threatened you last year? They threatened, so what? Madison shrugged. This is my job. I'm not going to sit quietly like some people. Avery coughed, looking down at her plate, and Logan noticed her fingers tightening around the napkin. She was unusually silent, and this only increased his anxiety. He remembered the message from N, the photo with Nathan, Madison's words about the cafe. He needed to say something, but not in front of Catherine. She would turn any hint of scandal into a disaster. By the way, Logan turned to his mother, trying to sound casual. Did you see Nathan Crow the other day? He mentioned that he wanted to discuss some project with you for the foundation. Catherine looked at him, her fork frozen in midair. Nathan? No, I haven't talked to him for a long time. What kind of project? I don't know, Logan shrugged, watching her reaction. He said it was something to do with investments. Thought you knew. No, Catherine cut off a piece of salmon. Her movements were precise, almost mechanical. If he wants to talk about the foundation, let him call my assistant. Logan nodded, but noticed how her gaze flickered to Avery for a second. It was fleeting, but enough to make his heart beat faster. Catherine always knew more than she said. He turned to Avery. Have you seen him recently? He asked, trying to keep his voice light. He said you were discussing some clients for the gallery. Avery looked up, her face calm, but her fingers still clutching the napkin. Yes, a couple of times, she replied. He brought one investor who wants to buy several works. Nothing special. I see, Logan nodded, but his mind was spinning. She spoke the same as in the morning when he asked about Nathan. Too smooth, too easy. Madison looked at him, her eyebrows raised slightly, but she didn't say anything. She turned to Catherine instead. What kind of ball is it, Mom? Are we going to raise money again for statues in the park while schools are collapsing? Catherine sighed, setting her fork down on her plate. Madison, your flair for the dramatic is tiresome. The ball is an opportunity to help the city. If you don't want to participate, that's your choice, but don't spoil the mood for others. Oh, I'm not spoiling, Madison smirked. Just reminding you that the world doesn't revolve around your tricks. Logan felt his patience wearing thin. He wanted to talk about Nathan, about what he had seen, but Catherine's dining room was the worst place for that. He looked at Avery, who was now slowly eating her salad, avoiding his gaze. Catherine, noticing his silence, changed the subject. Logan, how are things at the company? I heard you are taking on a new project in the center. Yes, he forced himself to concentrate. Office building on Michigan Avenue. Still at the sketch stage, but looks promising. Great, Catherine nodded. This will strengthen our name. Wells must always be ahead. Dinner continued, but Logan was barely listening. His thoughts went back to Nathan, to Catherine's evasive answer, to Avery's silence. As he and Avery got into the car to drive home, he felt the crack he had noticed the day before grow even deeper. Avery turned on the radio and soft jazz filled the cabin, but Logan knew that the silence between them spoke louder than any music. It was a rainy morning in Chicago. Gray clouds hung low over the city as if muffling the sound and light. Drops ran down glass facades and wet asphalt reflected neon signs, turning the streets into blurry mirrors. Logan Wells sat in his office on the 42nd floor of a skyscraper in the heart of the Loop. The space around was calibrated down to the millimeter, walls made of glass and steel, a minimalist table made of dark wood, on the computer screen architectural drawings, built with the precision that he always appreciated. This was his world, a world of lines, calculations, and symmetry. Here he usually felt in control. But today control was slipping away. He sat motionless, looking at the screen where the next project was outlined in clear strokes, and saw nothing. Thoughts did not allow me to concentrate. He hasn't slept much since that party. Ever since I saw that message on Avery's phone. Ever since I caught that look from Nathan. It seems like nothing concrete. Words, photos, touches that never happened. But everything together added up to a feeling that did not go away. The same question was spinning in my head. If nothing happens, why doesn't it feel like nothing? He rubbed his temples, leaned his elbows on the table, and took a deep breath. Behind the glass, the rain made a subtle noise, and the city below lived its own life. Logan felt like in this huge mechanism, he suddenly found himself not as an engineer, but as a part that no longer understood which way it was being rotated. Logan leaned back in his chair, looking out at the city through the window. The rain pattered on the glass, drowning out the roar of the office outside the door. He knew he should be working a new office building project required his attention, but instead he opened his laptop and Googled Chicago private investigator. It was an impulsive decision, and he felt like an idiot, but the doubts that had been building since the reception at Lakeview Tower became unbearable. The conversation with Avery yesterday morning had cleared up nothing, and lunch with Catherine only added more questions. He couldn't wait any longer. After half an hour of searching, Logan came across the Brown Investments website. No bright banners, just black text on a white background. Oliver Brown, discreet, effective, 20 years of experience. The reviews were terse, but everyone emphasized honesty and results. Logan wrote down the number and hesitated before dialing it. After 3 rings, a hoarse voice with a slight Chicago accent answered. Brown. The voice was low, slightly hoarse, without unnecessary words. Hello. Logan cleared his throat, as if something was stuck in his throat. My name is Logan Wells. I need a private investigator. On a personal matter. There was a short pause at the other end. Personal, you say? The voice did not change, but a slight, dry fatigue appeared in it. Not an irritation, rather an experience. Okay. Treason? Money? Is someone threatening? Logan closed his eyes. Saying it out loud was harder than he expected. Perhaps the first. He said it almost in a whisper. I'm not sure. I just want to know. Understood. Another pause. No problem. Today I can find time at 2. Where would be convenient for you to meet? In the center. Logan ran his hand over his forehead. There's a cafe on Wells Street called the Bean House. You know? I know. Brown spoke calmly, without interest. Professionally, I'll be there. Tall, bald, in a gray coat. You'll find out. Don't be late. Fine. Thank you. Logan hung up, looking at the screen of the darkened phone. He remained sitting with it in his hand, as if he had not yet let go of the conversation. Somewhere inside, there was already a voice asking, "And if you find out the truth, are you ready to hear it?" But it was too late to stop. The Bean House Cafe was small, with wooden tables and the smell of freshly ground coffee. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it was almost empty, except for a couple of students sitting in the corner with their laptops. Logan arrived 5 minutes early, ordered an espresso, and sat by the window, looking at the passers-by under their umbrellas. His dark blue jacket and white shirt stood out among the casual surroundings, but he didn't care. He was nervous, and it was unusual. Logan Wells had always been the one in control. At 14:03, the door opened, and a man in his 50s entered. The bald head glistened under the light of the lamps, the gray coat was slightly wrinkled, and under it a black sweater and jeans were visible. He looked around the cafe, noticed Logan, and headed towards him. "Logan Wells?" the man asked, approaching the table. "Yes." Logan stood up and shook his outstretched hand. A firm, dry handshake. "Oliver Brown, right?" "He's the one." Brown nodded, glancing at the empty side of the table. "Didn't order me coffee?" "Just kidding, I'm not proud." "I can now." "No need," he waved it off, already sitting down. "Okay, let's get to the point. What do you have, wife, girlfriend, ex, or all together?" Logan smiled slightly, but quickly wiped it off his face. He felt his shoulders tense. "Wife, Avery." He took a sip of coffee to delay the moment. "I have been noticing strange things lately. With her and my friend, Nathan." Brown took out a small notebook, opened it, and clicked his pen. "So, weirdness. What is it? Has she started avoiding you? Disappears on the weekends. Hiding your phone." "Not really." Logan shook his head. "More like something between them. It's like it's too close. Not physically well. I haven't seen anything like that yet. But the looks, the manner of speaking. On Friday at the reception, they stood very close, whispered and laughed. You know, like people who have something in common, but don't want to say it out loud." "Understood. Continue." "The next day, I accidentally saw a message from her. The phone was lying on the table, the screen lit up. There was a photo of the two of them in a cafe, and the signature, 'See you at 3, she said for work. N is for Nathan, am I correct?" Brown clarified, without looking up from his notebook. "Yes, we've known each other since college. He is a financial consultant. Works with some of Avery's clients at her gallery. So let's say they have reasons for communication. But all this goes beyond business. I feel it. You want me to check if they meet alone, where they go, what they do, right?" "Yes." Logan lowered his voice slightly. "I need facts. If there is something more than just friendship or work, I want to know for sure. Photos, records, everything that is possible." "Fine." Brown finally looked up. "Where and when can they be tracked? Where does it occur most often?" "Avery works at a gallery in River North, on Franklin Street, usually from 10 to 6. Sometimes she stays late. On Saturdays, she runs along the boardwalk, along the lake. She likes one cafe, the Ritz in Milwaukee. She is often seen there with clients. She almost always has her phone with her, but I know the password, in case you suddenly need it." "No need until I tell you." Brown nodded curtly. "What about Crow's? This Nathan, where to find him?" "He has an office in the Loop, Crow Finance, Lazell Street, from 9 to 5, but often leaves for meetings. I love restaurants and bars, especially Old Glory on Clark Street. Wednesdays, tennis at the Lincoln Park Club." Brown wrote quickly, almost without looking. "Do you have mutual acquaintances through whom they can meet? Who might be in the know?" "Well," Logan hesitated. "My mother, Catherine. She runs a foundation and sometimes collaborates with Nathan. But I doubt she knows anything personal." Cold. Brown closed the notebook, but did not put it away. Now the main thing. What exactly do you want from me? Just an observation, or active collection of information, photos, videos, recordings of conversations? Logan looked out the window, where thin streams of rain were running down the glass. Gray, wet, faceless. Surveillance. Photo. Confirmation. He spoke quietly but firmly. If they are dating, if there is something between them, I need to know. No guesswork. Facts. Fine. Brown put the notebook in his coat pocket. $100 an hour plus expenses. I usually ask for 1,000 in advance. I'll start with this. If everything is clean, we'll close it quickly. If not, let's discuss how to move forward. Logan took out his phone, opened the app, and transferred money. Showed a confirmation screen. Done. I see. Brown nodded, checking his phone. I'll start today. I'll track her route and see how often they intersect. If anything is urgent, I'll contact you. But I warn you, I am not a psychotherapist, and I won't hold your hand. Understand? Logan felt how it became a little easier for him to breathe, but along with this came another thing, a feeling of betrayal. He hired a man to watch his wife. But just recently, I considered this unthinkable. Brown stood up and pulled on his coat collar. The last one. Don't poke your nose in yourself. Don't get into her phone. Don't make a scene. If she is hiding something, her initiative will only scare her away. Let me do the work. Fine. Logan nodded, although I knew it would be damn difficult to restrain myself. I'll contact you in a couple of days. Brown nodded goodbye and left, leaving behind only a slight smell of wet fabric and the feeling that something had begun from which there would be no easy way out. Brown left, leaving Logan alone at the table. The coffee was cold, but he finished it, feeling the bitterness on his tongue. He looked at the street, where people were hurrying under umbrellas, and tried to understand how he got to this point. Just a week ago, his life seemed stable. Work, home, Avery. Now he was sitting in a cafe, having hired a detective to check on his wife and friend. He felt like a traitor, but his thirst for truth was stronger. Logan stood up, leaving a tip on the table, and walked to the car. The rain got heavier, and he knew that this day was just the beginning. This story is the fruit of the creativity of a novice author. If the topic is close to you, please support it by liking and subscribing. We are open to good advice, but we ask without negativity. It is important for everyone to go their own way at their own pace. The sun broke through the glass facades of skyscrapers, reflecting in the puddles after the night rain. Logan Wells sat in his office, looking at his laptop screen but not seeing the blueprints. His thoughts were far from work. It had been 2 days since he hired Oliver Brown, and each hour seemed to drag on like an eternity. He checked his phone every half hour, waiting for a call or message, but Brown remained silent. Logan tried to focus on the office building project, but the images of Avery and Nathan, their glances at the reception, the message with the initial N, the words of Madison were haunting. Avery had been acting normal for the past 2 days, but Logan was starting to notice little things. Yesterday, she said she would stay at the gallery until 8, but she returned home at 7, smelling not of her perfume, but of something sharp, like men's cologne. When he asked how her day was, she answered briefly, the usual fuss, and quickly went into the shower. This was unlike her. Avery usually liked to talk about her exhibitions, clients, even small gossip in the art world. Logan tried to convince himself that it didn't mean anything, but every evasive answer from her increased his suspicions. His phone vibrated on the table, and Logan jumped. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. He answered, trying to keep his voice even. Logan Wells. Brown, the detective's hoarse voice was businesslike. There is something. Can we meet in an hour? The same cafe, Bean House. Yes, I will. Logan felt his heart beat faster. What did you find? Not on the phone, Brown snapped. Come, let's discuss. The line went dead. Logan stared at the phone, feeling his palms become clammy. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and left the office, telling the secretary that he would be back in a couple of hours. In the elevator, he looked at his reflection in the mirror. dark circles under his eyes, a tense jaw. He looked like a man who doesn't sleep at night, and it was true. The bean house was the same as Monday. Wooden tables, the smell of coffee, the low hum of conversation. Logan had arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a black coffee, even though he knew he wouldn't drink it. He sat by the same window, watching the people pass by, and tried to brace himself for what Brown was going to say. Part of him still hoped this was a mistake, that Avery and Nathan were just friends, that he was overreacting. But the other part of him, the part that had seen their looks, the text, the photo, was bracing himself for the worst. Oliver Brown walked in exactly at 11. The same gray coat, the same bald skull, the same tiredness in the eyes. He carried a small envelope made of thick paper and, without saying hello, sat down opposite Logan. "You look like crap," Brown said, opening the envelope. "Are you awake?" "Not really," Logan shrugged, trying not to show his excitement. "What do you have?" Brown laid out 3 postcard-sized photographs on the table. Logan froze, looking at them. The first was Avery and Nathan entering a motel on the outskirts of Chicago, a place called the Sunset Inn, cheap, with a neon sign. Avery was wearing dark jeans and a gray coat. Nathan was wearing a leather jacket. They walked close, almost touching shoulders. In the second photo, they were standing at the door of the hotel room, and Nathan was holding Avery's hand. The third was taken through a window. They were sitting on the bed, Nathan leaning towards Avery, and she looked at him, her hand resting on his knee. Logan felt the blood drain from his face. He wanted to say something, but his throat tightened. He simply looked at the photographs until the world around him began to blur. "It was yesterday," Brown said, his voice flat and unsympathetic. "About 4 days. They were there for an hour, then left separately. I checked the motel, they didn't register, payment was in cash." Logan swallowed, forcing himself to breathe. "Are you sure it's them?" His voice was hoarse, almost alien. Brown narrowed his eyes. "Wells, I've been doing this for 20 years. This is your wife and your friend. If you want, I can show you a video, but it's no better." Logan shook his head, not taking his eyes off the photos. His Avery, is at the motel with Nathan. It was like a blow to the chest, but he couldn't stop. "What else?" he asked, clenching his fists under the table. "That's all for now." Brown put the photographs back into the envelope, but left it on the table. "I've been following her since Monday. She was in the gallery, in the Ritz Cafe, meeting with some clients. Nothing suspicious except this meeting. Crow was also acting normally office, bar, tennis yesterday morning. But they clearly knew where they were going. This is not an accident." Logan nodded, although he could barely hear it. His thoughts were spinning. Avery said yesterday that she would be in the gallery until evening. She was lying. He remembered her smell, her quick exit to the shower. Everything was adding up, and it was unbearable. "What's next?" he asked, looking at Brown. "It's up to you," Brown shrugged. "I can continue to follow, see if they meet again. I can dig deeper phones, correspondence, if you want, but it's more expensive and takes longer." "Go on," Logan said faster than he could think. "I want to know everything. How often, where, why?" Brown nodded, writing something down on his notepad. "Okay, give me a week. If they occur regularly, I will find a pattern. If this is a one-time story, we'll find out too." Logan took out his phone and transferred another $1,000 without looking at the screen. "Is this enough?" "For starters, yes." Brown checked the translation and put the phone away. "One more thing. Control yourself. Don't talk to her. Don't bother him. If they are hiding something, you will ruin everything." "I understand," Logan nodded, although he knew it would be difficult. He wanted to rush home, throw the photographs on the table, and demand an explanation. But he couldn't. "I couldn't yet." Brown stood up, taking the envelope. "I'll call when there's something new. And Wells, don't get worked up more than you need to. Sometimes things are simpler than they seem." He walked away, leaving Logan alone. The envelope lay on the table, and Logan did not immediately dare to open it. When he finally pulled out the photographs, his fingers were trembling. He looked at Avery and Nathan, their closeness, and felt something inside him break. He put the photos away, put the envelope in his briefcase, and left the cafe. The rain had stopped, but the air was cold, and Logan turned up the collar of his coat as he walked toward the car. In the evening, he returned home earlier than usual. Avery was in the living room, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, flipping through a magazine. Her dark brown hair was down, and her t-shirt and leggings made her look younger, almost like the Avery he had met 10 years ago. But now he saw her differently. "You're early," she looked at him, smiling. "Was it a normal day?" "Yes." Logan took off his jacket, trying to speak calmly. "I'm just tired. And you?" "Oh, vanity," she shrugged, sipping her wine. "I met with a client, then sorted out papers in the gallery. My head is swelling." Logan nodded, feeling her words cut. She was lying again. There was no gallery yesterday. She was at the motel with Nathan. He wanted to ask, but remembered Brown's words. Instead, he said, Nathan called. He said he wanted to meet and discuss some projects. Avery froze for a second, but then smiled. "Is it true? He didn't tell me anything. Maybe something for your mom's foundation." "Maybe," Logan looked at her, trying to catch at least something in her face. But she was, as always, calm, confident. "Have you seen him recently?" "Well, at the reception on Friday," she shrugged. "And a couple of times for work." "Why are you asking?" Just like that, he turned away, walking towards the kitchen. "I'll go make some coffee." In the kitchen, he turned on the coffee maker, but his hands were shaking. He knew she was lying. And worst of all, he didn't know how to live with it. The phone in his pocket vibrated a message from Nathan. "Hey, old man, let's go for a drink on Friday. Old glory, as usual." Logan gritted his teeth. Nathan acted as if nothing was happening. Logan didn't answer, but he knew he would meet him. Not to drink, but to look him in the eyes. He returned to the living room, clutching his mug, and realized that there was no turning back. The truth, whatever it may be, is already closed. The old brick Old Glory Tavern sign flickered like a time-chewed neon smile. Inside it smelled of oak barrels, cheap whiskey, and fried wings. Dull blues flowed from the speakers, interrupted by the clatter of billiard balls. Logan walked in without a coat. The evening was humid, but inside there was a dry, intense heat. Nathan was already sitting at the usual counter at the far end, his elbow on the worn wood, a Basil Hayden with an ice cube in front of him. He noticed Logan and raised his glass. "Old man, finally, I thought you would cancel." Logan didn't answer, just sat down next to him and nodded to the bartender. "Double rye, no ice," he said. As the glass stood in front of him, Logan pulled an envelope from his inside pocket. The thick cream cardboard contrasted sharply with the sticky counter. He placed it between himself and Nathan. "What is this?" Nathan tried to smile, but the corners of his lips twitched. "Souvenir. Look." Logan opened the envelope. 3 pictures fanned out. A motel, a room door, a hand on a knee. The silence around seemed to move closer. Nathan lowered his eyes. The grin disappeared. The face slid into the blank expression of a man caught in a camera flash. He exhaled slowly. "Crap." "Exactly." Logan took his first sip of whiskey, feeling the liquid fire scratching his throat. "Speak." The bartender instinctively took a step to the side, leaving them in the semi-darkness of the corner. "Logan, listen. This is a mistake." Nathan spoke quietly, as if checking every word against a scale of acceptable lies. "Once, we had a drink after the exhibition and talked about its investor. Everything crossed the line and that's it. The next day, we both decided it was over. Point." Logan shrugged his shoulders, muscles ached. "You call this a point? The pictures were taken yesterday, Nathan." Nathan bit the inside of his lip for a second. "Okay? Second time. I'm guilty, yes. But it's not a romance. There are no feelings, just chemistry and stress. You know how it is." "How does it happen?" Logan's voice became even, almost quiet. "You sleep with my wife and explain it as stress? Do you have any idea how I feel?" Nathan finally looked up. "Gray-blue, Usually carefree, now dull. I'm shit, Logan. I know, but I didn't want to destroy your family. You already did it. Nathan rubbed his hand over his neck as if erasing a noose. Let me fix everything. I'll talk to Avery, Do you think I need to fix you? Logan leaned closer. I need the truth. How many times? When did it start? Does she love you? For some time, the only sound that could be heard was the drop of ice in Nathan's glass. I didn't count, Logan. 5, 6, from mid-March. She said there was a distance between you, that you live by work, that... Stop it. Logan squeezed the glass, clearly feeling the edge of the glass under his fingers. Don't put it on me. You could have come. Tell me. You're my brother, damn it. Nathan's chin trembled, but no tears came. He just scratched the counter with his nail. I was afraid of losing you. It was easier to close my eyes. I thought it would resolve itself. Same. Logan smiled wryly. You always thought, Nathan. In college when he borrowed my money and forgot. When fishing when the boat leaked and you didn't check. But this. He poked his finger at the photograph, a stain of whiskey spreading along the edge of the paper. This is not a scratch on the boat. This is my life. Both were silent for several seconds. A tourist with a Cubs baseball cap approached the bar, but, sensing tension, he moved to the other side. Finally, Nathan spoke. Tell me what to do. Any price. Logan lowered his head, looking at the reflection of the lamp in the dark surface of the drink. You can't undo what happened. He got up. But you can disappear. From her life. From mine. Logan. Nathan's voice broke. We have been friends for so many years. Logan put the envelope back. Now we are in different worlds. He tossed a few bills on the counter for both of their accounts and turned around. And one more thing. He turned over his shoulder. If you love any of what we had, don't you dare come near Madison. She is not a shield between us. Nathan nodded, lowering his head. Logan walked out and the door slammed, letting in the roar of traffic. The night air was damp and smelled of asphalt and gasoline. Logan walked a block before realizing that his hand was clutching the phone until his knuckles ached. He dialed the number that had become his lifeline in recent days. Brown. This is Wells. Keep watching. And... He swallowed, tasting rust. Call her phone. I need messages. Calls everything from the moment we could. Understood. But this is delicate work. 2 or 3 days. Do it. And Brown, thank you. He put the phone away, breathed in the cold air, and for the first time in days he felt not relief, but clarity. The truth was no longer scary. She became a weapon. Logan Wells drove into the West Loop toward Madison's apartment, gripping the steering wheel of his SUV as if it would keep his mind from running wild. After meeting Nathan at Old Glory yesterday, he felt both empty and charged, like a wire through which too much current had passed. Nathan admitted, but his words, "This is not a romance, just chemistry," sounded like a cheap excuse. Logan knew the truth was deeper, and he wasn't going to stop until he got it all figured out. An envelope containing photographs lay on the passenger seat, its cream edge looking incongruously clean against the worn leather upholstery. Logan didn't look at him, but he felt his presence, like a weight that couldn't be lifted. He stayed up most of the night, replaying the conversation with Nathan, Avery's lies, Catherine's evasiveness at the family dinner. He needed someone to talk to, and Madison was the only person he trusted enough to spill everything. He parked at the old brick building where his sister lived and walked up to the 3rd floor, passing the elevator that always creaked like a rusty cart. In his hands, he held the same paper bag of donuts, a ritual that had become a tradition for him and Madison. Knocking on the door, he heard a muffled "open" and entered. Madison's apartment was in its usual state, organized chaos. Stacks of books on the floor, a board with notes pinned to the wall, the smell of yesterday's coffee, and something burnt, possibly toast. Madison sat cross-legged on the couch, wearing a stretched-out Nirvana t-shirt and a laptop on her lap. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and there were light shadows under her eyes, a sure sign that she was working until 3 in the morning again. "Oh, donuts," she said, not looking up from the screen, but reaching out to the bag Logan had placed on the coffee table. "You are my hero. Do you have it with chocolate glaze?" "Two," Logan answered, sitting down in the chair opposite. His voice was quieter than usual, and Madison immediately looked up. "Okay, what's with that face?" She slammed her laptop shut and leaned back on the couch, donut in hand. "You look like you just found out your skyscraper project got canceled. Or worse." Logan was silent, looking at his hands. He didn't know where to start. The envelope lay in his briefcase, which he placed at his feet, and the photographs inside seemed to burn a hole in his skin. Finally, he looked up. "I was right mad," he said quietly, "about Avery and Nathan. This is not just my speculation." Madison froze, her donut hand stopping halfway to her mouth. "Wait, what?" She leaned forward, her brown eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about? You talked to her?" "Not with her. With Nathan." Logan rubbed his neck, feeling the tension in his muscles. "And also, I hired a detective. Oliver Brown. He gave me proof." Madison whistled as she placed the donut on the table. "Detective, seriously, Logan?" She shook her head, but there was no condemnation in her voice, only surprise. "Okay, spit it out. What kind of evidence?" Logan took an envelope from his briefcase and handed it to her. His fingers trembled slightly, but he tried not to show it. Madison took the envelope, looked at it for a second, as if deciding whether she wanted to know what was inside, and then opened it. She pulled out 3 photographs and laid them out on the table. Her face remained calm, but her eyebrows slowly rose. "Damn," she muttered, looking at the picture of Avery and Nathan entering the motel. "Is this the Sunset Inn on the outskirts? Have they completely lost their brains?" "Looks like it," Logan said, his voice hoarse. "It was on Tuesday. They were there for an hour. Payment in cash without registration." Madison glanced at the second photo, Nathan, holding Avery's hand at the door of the hotel room. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Okay, it's not just coffee anymore," she said, leaning back. "And what did Nathan say? You talked to him, right?" Logan nodded, looking out the window where the wind blew the clouds over the rooftops. "Yesterday, at Old Glory, I showed him these photos. He didn't deny it. Said it started in March. 5 or 6 times, he said. Like, just chemistry, no feelings." He chuckled, but there was no humor in the sound. "As if that should comfort me." "God, what a moron!" Madison rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "Just chemistry? Is this how he covers his ass? And Avery? Have you spoken to her?" "No." Logan shook his head. "The detective said not to go in until he collects more. But I see how she lies. Yesterday she said again that she was in the gallery, but I know that this is not true. She won't even look me in the eye, mad." Madison sighed, rubbing her temples. "Logan, damn, I don't know what to say. This is crap. Just crap." She paused, looking at the photographs. "But you know what pisses me off the most? Nathan. This guy was always as slippery as an eel. Do you remember how he borrowed 500 from you in college and then fed you breakfast for 6 months?" "I remember," Logan nodded, his lips twitching in a bitter smile. "I thought he had changed. 20 years of friendship, mad. And he—" "Yes, I know," she interrupted softly. "It's like a knife in the back. But listen, you can't just sit there and chew this in your head. What are you going to do?" "I'm still waiting to see what else Brown finds," Logan said. "He's digging through their phones, their text messages, but I don't know how long I can keep quiet. Every time Avery says he's going to a meeting, I feel like I'm shaking." Madison nodded, her gaze sharpening as if she had switched into journalist mode. "Okay, let's think about it. Nathan is a financial advisor, right? Works with big money, clients, all sorts of murky schemes. I can dig around. I have a couple of contacts that can get him through the bases. If he got into something dirty, it could be related." Logan looked at her, his eyebrows raised slightly. "Are you serious? Do you think there might be more to it than just—" "Well, I don't know," Madison shrugged, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. But Nathan has always been that player. If he's sleeping with your wife and acting like nothing happened, who knows what else he's hiding? Give me a couple of days, I'll talk to people. Okay, Logan nodded, feeling something like hope stir in his chest. But be careful, Mad. If he's really into something, I don't want you to get hurt. Oh, come on, she waved her hand, grinning. I dug under the mafiosi and mayors, and you are afraid for me because of some Nathan. Relax, bro. I know what I'm doing. Logan smiled faintly, but his thoughts had already moved on. He remembered lunch at Catherine's, her evasive look when he mentioned Nathan. Mad, he began, lowering his voice. Don't you think Mom might? No, about Avery and Nathan? Madison froze, her hand holding the coffee stopping in the air. She looked at him, her face becoming more serious. Catherine, she put the mug on the table, her voice became quieter. Look, I don't want to slander her, but she always knows everything. She sure as hell has a nose like a bloodhound when it comes to family reputation. If something was going on, she could pick up on the hints. But tell you? No way. This is Catherine. She would rather swallow her tongue than allow a scandal. But why was she silent? Logan frowned, his fingers clenching into a fist. If she knew, why didn't she let me know? Because you're her golden boy, Logan, Madison shrugged, but there was bitterness in her voice. She wants you to be the perfect architect with the perfect wife and the perfect life. If she knew about Avery, then most likely she hoped that it would resolve itself, or that you won't notice. This is crazy, Logan muttered, rubbing his face. She's my mother. Yeah, and she's a control freak, Madison snorted. Look, I'm not saying that she knew for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. Do you want me to check that too? She has an assistant, Linda, who sometimes talks more than necessary. I can try to get her to talk. Logan thought about it. The idea of digging into his mother's affairs seemed wrong, but after everything he had learned, he was no longer sure where the line between right and necessary was. Okay, he said finally, but it's quiet. If she realizes that we are swarming, she will crush us. Oh, I know how to be invisible, Madison grinned, but immediately became more serious. Logan, how are you? I'm serious. This is all. It's like a bomb. He looked at her, feeling his throat tighten. He wanted to say that he was fine, but the truth was different. I don't know, Mad, he admitted. I'm angry. On her, on him, on myself. But most of all, I just don't understand how we got to this point. We were happy, or I thought they were. Madison reached out and squeezed his wrist. Her hand was warm, and for a second Logan felt like her big brother again, and not a man whose life was falling apart. It's not your fault, she said firmly. Do you hear? Whatever it is, it's their choice, not yours. And you will figure it out. You always figure it out. Thank you, Logan nodded, but his voice was barely audible. Madison let go of his hand and opened her laptop again. Okay, I'll start with Nathan. I have one guy who can break through financial statements. If this crown of yours is connected to something murky, I will find it. And you. Try not to go crazy, okay? And keep me posted on what Brown digs up. Agreed, Logan stood up, feeling the fatigue falling on his shoulders. And Mad, thank you. Is it true? Fuck, she waved her hand, but her eyes were softer than usual. Go home, Logan, and don't look at these photos again. They'll burn your brains out. He nodded, picked up his briefcase, and walked out. The wind hit his face outside, but Logan kept his collar up. He walked to the car, anger, pain, and something new determination mixing in his chest. Madison was right. He would figure this out. But first, he needed to know how deep this hole he'd fallen into was. Logan Wells sat in his home office, surrounded by silence, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Outside the window, Chicago was dissolving into twilight. The lights of skyscrapers lit up one after another like stars in the concrete sky. His laptop was open, but the screen had long gone dark. Logan hadn't touched it in an hour. Instead of working, he went over in his head everything he had learned in recent days. Photographs from the motel, Nathan's confession, Madison's message about the Keystone Trust. Each new piece of information was like a hammer blow, splitting his old life into smaller and smaller fragments. Avery was at home, in the living room, judging by the sounds, flipping through a magazine or looking at something on her tablet. Her presence, so familiar, now felt alien. Logan had been avoiding her gaze ever since he got back from Madison. He didn't know how to look her in the eyes, knowing that she was lying. But what was even worse was that he couldn't understand why. Nathan said it was chemistry, but Logan felt there was more to it than that. Madison's words about the offshore company only strengthened this feeling. His phone vibrated on the table, and Logan jumped. The number was unfamiliar, but he was already used to it. Oliver Brown never called from the same one. Logan answered, pressing the phone to his ear. Wells, his voice was hoarse, tired. Brown, the detective replied, as always, without further ado. There's news. Important. We'll meet in an hour, Bean House. Don't be late. What did you find? Logan straightened up, his heart beating faster. Not on the phone, Brown snapped. Come, let's sort it out. The line went dead and Logan stared at the phone, feeling the adrenaline pulsing through his veins. He stood up, grabbed his keys and jacket, throwing them over his shoulder towards the living room. Avery, I'm going to the office in an hour. We need to check something. Okay, her voice came from afar, light, almost indifferent. Don't be late. Logan didn't answer. He left the house, got into his car and drove downtown, trying not to think about what he might hear from Brown. But my thoughts still revolved around one thing. What if this is not just betrayal? What if he didn't know Avery at all? The Bean House Cafe greeted him with the familiar smell of coffee and the muffled hum of conversations. This evening the room was a little livelier. Several couples, a group of students at a corner table, a man in a business suit, buried in a laptop. Logan ordered black coffee, even though he knew he wouldn't touch it, and sat by the window. His fingers tapped nervously on the table as he waited. Oliver Brown came in 10 minutes later, still in the same gray coat, with a tired look and light stubble on his chin. In his hands he held a thin folder tied with an elastic band. He sat down opposite Logan, throwing the folder on the table. You look like you've been run over by a truck, Brown said, his voice dry but not mocking. When was the last time you slept? I don't remember, Logan shrugged, looking at the folder. What's there? Brown leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. I dug deeper, like you asked. Phones, bank accounts, correspondence. Found some interesting stuff. He tapped the folder. Your wife was transferring money, large sums, to an account at a company called Keystone Trust. Logan frowned, his fingers still. Keystone Trust? He remembered Madison's message. Is this the offshore company where Nathan is involved? Exactly, Brown nodded. Crow is listed as the director there. Unofficially, of course, but his signature is on several documents. The company is registered in the Cayman Islands, but the money flows through a Chicago bank. Avery has made 3 transfers in the past 2 months, $50,000 each. Logan felt the blood drain from his face. $150,000. His voice was barely audible. Where did she get that kind of money? And why? Money from her personal account, Brown said, opening the folder and pulling out a printout. She took them off gradually through the gallery. Looks like it was disguised as payment for consultations. But here's what's strange. The transfers were not made to Crow's name, but to the Keystone Trust. And there is no sign that she received anything in return. No services, no assets, nothing. Logan took the printout, his eyes skimming over the numbers and dates. March 20th, 50,000, April 15th, 50,000, May 10th, 50,000. His hands were shaking, but he forced himself to speak calmly. Is this blackmail? He asked, looking at Brown. Is Nathan forcing her? Brown shrugged, his face unreadable. Maybe, but there is no evidence yet. I found several messages between them, nothing explicit, all in streamlined phrases. He writes something like, we need to meet, discuss the details. She replies, okay, but not now. She looks nervous, but doesn't resist. If this is blackmail, he is smart, he leaves no traces. Logan clenched the printout, the paper crumpling in his hand. "He's threatening her," he said, more to himself than to Brown. "He's using their connection to extract money from her. This is not just cheating." "Maybe," Brown squinted, "but there is something else. The Keystone Trust is connected to your family foundation. Not directly, but through a couple of intermediaries. I found payments from the fund into an account that then transferred the money to Keystone. And guess who signed these payments? Your mother, Catherine." Logan froze, his thoughts spinning. Catherine. Her evasive look at dinner, her abrupt response when he mentioned Nathan. Madison was right, she knew more than she was saying. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice tense. 100%. Brown pulled out another piece of paper where transactions were highlighted. "These are not large amounts, but they are regular. Looks like the foundation is using Keystone as a pad for some kind of operation. Maybe for taxes, maybe for something else. But Catherine knows." Logan leaned back in his chair, feeling the world around him shrink. Avery, Nathan, now Catherine, everyone he considered close to him was connected by this web. He looked at Brown, trying to collect his thoughts. "What else?" he asked. "Is there something that ties it all together?" "Not yet." Brown closed the folder. "But I'm digging. If Nathan is blackmailing Avery, he must screw up somewhere. Correspondence, calls, witnesses. Give me a couple more days. And, Wells, I'm serious. Don't get involved yourself. If this is blackmail, it may be more dangerous than it seems." Logan nodded, but his mind had already raced. He imagined Avery trapped here, forced to pay Nathan to keep their marriage a secret. Or worse, to hide something Logan didn't even know about. He remembered her face last night, her evasive answers, her fingers nervously clutching her glass. She wasn't a happy lover. She was scared. "How much do I owe you?" Logan asked, taking out his phone. "Another 1,000, said Brown. "But if it goes deeper, the price will rise." Telephones and offshore companies are not a cheap pleasure. Logan transferred the money without looking at the screen. He felt like a man paying for his own death sentence. "Go on," he said. "And if you find anything that proves blackmail, I want to be the first to know." Brown nodded, took the folder, and stood up. "Be careful, Wells. People who play with that kind of money don't like to get caught." He left, leaving Logan with printouts and cooling coffee. Logan looked at the numbers, at the name Keystone Trust, and felt his anger give way to something else: determination. Nathan didn't just betray him. He manipulated Avery, possibly threatened her. And Catherine. Logan didn't want to believe that his mother could have been part of this, but the facts spoke for themselves. When Logan returned home, Avery was already asleep or pretending to be. He walked into the bedroom, looked at her silhouette under the blanket, at her dark hair scattered across the pillow. She looked so vulnerable, and for a second Logan wanted to wake her, demanding the truth. But he remembered Brown's words and quietly left, closing the door. In his office, he opened his laptop and wrote a message to Madison. Brown found transfers from Avery to the Keystone Trust. 150,000. Nathan is the director, and Mom is connected through the fund. This could be blackmail. What do you have? The answer came 5 minutes later. "Damn, Logan, this is serious. My contact says Keystone is not just an offshore company, but a whole scheme. They launder money for someone big. I'm checking connections with Nathan. Nothing about Catherine yet, but I'm on Linda. Sit quietly, okay?" Logan Wells was driving along Lakeshore Drive, heading to his mother's charity office in Evanston. Outside the window, the gray waters of Lake Michigan flashed, rippled by a light wind. The sky was clear, but Logan didn't notice the sun or the blue. His thoughts were busy with the upcoming conversation with Catherine. After Madison's message yesterday and new evidence from Oliver Brown, he couldn't wait any longer. Catherine knew more than she was saying, and Logan was determined to bring her to light. The foundation's office was located in an old red brick building, surrounded by well-tended flower beds. Logan parked, straightened his dark blue jacket, and walked inside. The lobby was bright, with marble floors and paintings by local artists on the walls. Everything screamed respectability. The secretary, a young woman with a neat bun, smiled at him. "Mr. Wells, your mother is waiting for you," she said, pointing down the corridor. "Second floor, her office." Logan nodded and walked up the stairs, feeling his heartbeat a little faster. He wasn't sure what he wanted to hear, but it was too late to back out. Catherine's office door was ajar, and he knocked before entering. Catherine Wells sat at the massive dark wood desk, looking through papers. Her silver hair was styled impeccably, and her dark green suit looked as if it had just been delivered from the tailor. She looked up, and a discreet smile touched her lips. "Logan, dear," she said, putting the papers aside. "I didn't expect you so soon. Have a seat." Logan closed the door and sat down in the leather chair opposite. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice smooth but firm. "About Avery and Nathan." Catherine raised an eyebrow slightly, her face remaining calm, but Logan noticed how her fingers tightened on the handle for a second. "What are you talking about, Logan?" she asked, her tone light, almost surprised. "Did something happen?" "Don't pretend," Logan leaned forward, his gaze hard. "I know Avery and Nathan are having an affair. And I know you know. You worked with Nathan through the foundation. You saw how they communicate. Why didn't you tell me anything?" Catherine straightened up, her eyes narrowed. She put down her pen and folded her hands on the table, her movements precise, almost mechanical. "Logan, this is a serious accusation," she said, her voice growing colder. "I had no idea about any connection between Avery and Nathan. Yes, Nathan advised the fund on investments, but it was a job. If they have something personal, I don't know." Logan looked at her, searching her face for any hint of truth. He noticed how her lips twitched slightly, how she looked away for a split second when she mentioned Nathan. It was subtle, but Logan knew his mother. She never lost her composure unless she was caught off guard. "You're lying," he said quietly, but his words sounded like a blow. "I hired a detective, Mom. I have proof. Photos, money transfers, records. And I know that the fund is connected to the Keystone Trust, where Nathan is a director. You signed the payments. You knew what he was doing to Avery, and you stayed silent." Catherine froze, her face turned pale, but she quickly pulled herself together. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the flower beds below. Her back was straight as a string. "You don't know what you're talking about, Logan," she said without turning around. "The fund works with dozens of companies. Keystone Trust is one of them, yes, but it's standard operations. I don't follow Nathan or Avery's personal life. And I'm not going to make excuses to you for something I didn't do." Logan felt anger boiling in his chest. He stood up, his fists clenching. "Stop it," he said, his voice getting louder. "You always know everything, Mom. You control every step of this family. You saw Nathan and Avery getting close and decided it was none of your business. Or what? Did you think that the scandal would harm your reputation, and that's why you remained silent?" Catherine turned around, her eyes sparkling. "Watch your tone, Logan," she said sharply. "I'm your mother, not the accused. Yes, I've noticed that Avery and Nathan communicate often, but it's not my place to interfere in your marriage. If you have problems with your wife, solve them with her, and do not interrogate her here." Logan stepped closer, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "You could have warned me. You could have said a word, but you chose silence because it is more important to you how we look in the eyes of your sponsors than what is happening in my life." Catherine pursed her lips, her fingers nervously fiddling with the bracelet on her wrist, a gesture Logan only saw in the rare moments when she lost control. "You're unfair," she said, but her voice was quieter than before. "I have always protected this family. Everything I do is for your sake." "For our sake," Logan smiled bitterly. "Or for the sake of your ideal image. I'm leaving, Mom. But this is not the end. I'll figure out what you're hiding." He turned and left without giving her time to answer. In the corridor, he heard her calling his name, but did not stop. In the car, he clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, and only then did he realize that he was trembling. Catherine was lying. He saw it in her eyes, in her gestures. And that was worse than Avery cheating. His mother, the woman who taught him honesty, chose reputation over truth. In the evening, Logan returned home, but could not sit still. He walked around the office, sorting through printouts from Brown, bank transfers, photographs, excerpts from correspondence. Each document was like a knife, but Logan couldn't stop. He knew he had to talk to Avery, but first he needed to get everyone together: Avery, Catherine, Madison, and put an end to this nightmare. He texted Madison, "Tomorrow at the mansion, 6 p.m. Bring everything you found. I'm calling the family." The answer came a minute later. "I will. It will be an explosion. Hang in there." Logan dialed Catherine's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice cold but tense. "Logan, I hope you've calmed down," she said. "Tomorrow, 6 p.m. at the mansion," he said without greeting. "Be there, and don't try to get out of it." "Logan, this is ridiculous," she began, but he interrupted. "I'm not asking, Mom. Be there." He hung up and texted Avery, who was in the gallery. "Tomorrow, 6 p.m. mansion. We need to talk. Everyone." She responded with a quick, "Okay," and Logan felt his heart clench. She knew he had unearthed something, and perhaps she was afraid. The Wells mansion on the shores of Lake Michigan was majestic. White columns, huge windows, a garden that slopes down to the water. The inside smelled of polished wood and fresh flowers, but today the atmosphere was heavy, like before a thunderstorm. Logan arrived first, placing folders of evidence on the dining room table that he had prepared with the help of Brown and Madison. Photos, bank statements, printed messages, everything lay in neat piles, like an indictment ready to be read out. Madison walked in at 5:50, wearing jeans and a black turtleneck, with a backpack slung over her shoulder. Her face was serious, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Well, brother, are you ready for the show?" she asked, throwing her backpack on a chair. "I brought everything I found." Keystone Trust is not just an offshore company. They are making money for some big shots. Nathan is a puppet, but someone from above is pulling the strings. "Thanks, Mad," Logan nodded, his voice quiet. "I just want this to end." "It will end," she squeezed his shoulder, "but it will hurt." Catherine arrived promptly at 6 o'clock, her footsteps echoing in the hall. She walked into the dining room. Her dark blue suit was immaculate, but her face looked tired. She looked at Logan, then at Madison, and her eyes fell on the folders. "What kind of circus is this, Logan?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You called us together as if for a trial. Explain yourself." "Wait," Logan said, his tone cold. "Avery isn't here yet." Avery came in 5 minutes later, her dark green dress looking too formal for a family dinner. Her face was pale, her eyes avoiding Logan. She sat down opposite Catherine, her fingers nervously fiddling with the edge of her bag. "Okay," Logan stood up. His voice was firm, but inside he felt everything trembling. "We're here because I'm tired of lies. From all of you, I know about Avery and Nathan. I know about the Keystone Trust, and I know that none of you told me the truth." He opened the first folder and laid out photos from the motel. Avery gasped, her hand going to her mouth. Catherine pursed her lips, her eyes narrowed. Madison was silent, watching. "It was Tuesday," Logan said, pointing to the pictures. "Avery, you said you were in the gallery, but you were with Nathan. At the Sunset Inn. Don't lie, I talked to him." He confessed. Avery lowered her head, her shoulders shaking. She remained silent, and Logan continued, pulling out bank statements. "You transferred money to Keystone Trust. 150,000. Nathan is the director. It's not just a romance, Avery. He blackmailed you, right?" Avery looked up, her face wet with tears. "Logan, I." Her voice broke. "I didn't want to. He said he would tell everyone about us, about what happened. He threatened to destroy my career, my gallery. I didn't know what to do." Logan felt his heart clench, but he didn't stop. "Why didn't you come to me?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I'm your husband, Avery. We could figure it out together." "I was afraid," she whispered. "You're so right, Logan. I thought you wouldn't forgive me. And he said he had tapes, proof. I paid him to keep quiet. Catherine coughed, her voice harsh. Logan, this is Avery's personal business. You shouldn't have been digging into it, and especially not making this spectacle. Logan turned to her, his eyes sparkling. Personal? He pulled out another folder. The foundation transferred money to the Keystone Trust. You signed off on the payments, Mom. You knew what Nathan was doing, and you kept quiet. Why? Catherine turned pale, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. That's a lie, she said, but her voice was shaking. The fund works with many companies. I didn't know Keystone was connected to Nathan. Stop it, Logan raised his voice. You always know everything. You saw them getting closer and decided it was none of your business. Or worse, you covered for him so that there would be no scandal. For your precious reputation. Madison, who had been silent until then, stood up, her voice calm but firm. Mom, I checked. The Keystone Trust is a laundering scheme. Nathan is a pawn, but someone above is profiting. And the fund is involved in this. You can deny it, but we have documents. Catherine looked at Madison, her face contorted with anger. How dare you, Madison, she said. You were always against the family. These are your inventions to denigrate me. That's enough. Logan slammed his fist on the table, causing the folders to jump. I don't want any more lies. Avery, you should have told me. Mom, you should have warned me. And you, Mad, he looked at his sister. You're the only one who's been honest with me. Avery sobbed, her voice barely audible. Logan, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm just confused. Logan looked at her, and for a second he wanted to hug her, comfort her. But the pain was too strong. I don't know how to move forward, Avery, he said, but I can't live with a lie. He turned to Catherine, his voice icy. And you, Mom, I thought you were on my side, but you chose your image. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. We're done. Catherine stood up, her face as white as chalk. Logan, you can't talk like that, she said, her voice shaking. I'm your mother. I did everything for the family. You did everything for yourself, he said, collecting the folders. I'm leaving, and don't call me until you're ready to tell the truth. He turned and walked out without looking back. Madison followed him, her hand resting on his shoulder as they walked out onto the porch. Are you okay? She asked quietly. No, Logan answered, looking out at the lake. But I will. They got into his car, and Logan started the engine. The mansion was left behind, a symbol of everything he had lost. But in that pain, there was freedom from lies, from illusions. Logan didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing. He would no longer live in the shadow of other people's secrets. The streets below were bustling with life. Cars honked, pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks, and skyscrapers reflected the cold light of the November sun. But inside Logan there was silence, not peaceful, but heavy, as if someone had turned off the sound in his world. On the table behind him was a folder of divorce papers that he was supposed to give to Avery today. His lawyer, Richard Kane, assured that the case would be simple. The evidence of infidelity was irrefutable, and Avery had no intention of challenging it. Logan turned to the table, his fingers touching the folder. Photos from the motel, bank transfers to Keystone Trust, call records, all of this now seemed distant, like someone else's history. But the pain they caused never went away. She lived in him, pulsating in his chest, reminding him of every betrayal: Avery, Nathan, Catherine. Logan knew divorce was the right move, but he didn't feel relieved. Only emptiness. Richard entered without knocking, his dark suit impeccable as always. He was holding a cup of coffee and looked like he had just won a Supreme Court case. Everything is ready, Logan, he said, sitting down opposite. Avery agreed to sign without trial. No claims to property, no disputes. She wants it to end quickly. Logan nodded, his eyes glued to the folder. Did she say anything? He asked, although he wasn't sure if he wanted to know the answer. Richard shrugged, taking a sip of his coffee. A little. Her lawyer said she was sorry and did not want to delay the process. She seems to understand that she has no chance. With evidence like this, any judge will side with you. Logan was silent. He remembered Avery in the mansion, her tears, her confession about blackmailing Nathan. Then he almost believed that she was a victim. But the truth was more complex. She made a choice when she began to lie, when she went to the motel, when she transferred money. Blackmail did not justify betrayal. "When will she sign?" Logan asked, his voice level but tired. "Today," Richard replied. "I've arranged to meet her at her office in the gallery at 3 o'clock. You don't have to be there, I'll sort it out." "No," Logan shook his head. "I'll be there. It must end face to face." Richard raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. "As you wish. But control yourself, Logan. She's not worth your nerves." Logan didn't answer. He knew Richard was right, but that didn't make the pain any less real. Avery's gallery was in River North, in a building with tall windows and brick walls. Logan walked inside, smelling the paint and varnish that he always associated with her world. The paintings on the walls, bright abstractions and dark portraits, now seemed foreign, as if they belonged to another woman. Avery waited in her office, sitting at her light wood desk. Her dark hair was pulled back into a low bun, and her white blouse looked too formal for her. She looked up as Logan entered, and her face trembled, but she quickly pulled herself together. Richard and Avery's lawyer, a short woman named Linda, were already there, laying out documents. Logan sat down across from Avery, trying not to look her in the eye. He felt her gaze, but did not want to give her a chance to talk about anything other than divorce. "Mrs. Wells," Linda began, her voice businesslike, "have you read the terms and conditions? Division of property, no alimony, complete termination of marital obligations. If you agree, sign here and here." Avery nodded, her fingers trembling slightly as she took the pen. She looked at Logan, her eyes full of pain, but he looked away. "Logan," she said quietly, almost in a whisper, "I know you won't forgive me, but I'm really sorry. It didn't have to end this way." Logan clenched his jaw, his fingers digging into the arms of his chair. He wanted to tell her that her regrets didn't change anything, that she had ruined everything they had. But instead, he simply nodded. "Sign it, Avery," he said, his voice cold. "Let's finish this." She lowered her eyes and signed 2 sheets of paper. Her hand moved slowly, as if each stroke took away her strength. Linda took the documents, checked them, and nodded to Richard. "It's okay," she said. "We will send copies to the court. The divorce will be finalized within 2 weeks." Richard stood up, gathering his things. "Let's go, Logan," he said. "There's nothing more to do here." Logan looked at Avery one last time. She sat with her head down, her shoulders hunched, as if she was carrying an invisible weight. He felt a pang of pity, but immediately suppressed it. She made her choice. Now he must make his own. He left the gallery without looking back. It was cold outside, the wind from the lake chilled to the bone, but Logan did not turn up his collar. He wanted to feel this cold, wanted it to repress the pain that burned him from the inside. Nathan Crow left Chicago 3 days after the meeting at the mansion. Logan learned about this from Madison, who followed his movements through her journalistic connections. Nathan didn't just leave, he ran away. The evidence collected by Oliver Brown and the threat of exposure of the Keystone Trust have made his position in the city untenable. Madison said he sold his Gold Coast apartment for half price and flew to Miami, where he was rumored to be trying to start a new offshore scheme. Logan felt no satisfaction from his escape. Nathan was a coward, but his departure could not erase the betrayal. Madison came to Logan the same evening he received confirmation from Richard that the divorce papers had been sent to court. She brought out a bottle of bourbon and 2 pizzas, declaring that it's officially a new life day. They sat on the balcony of his temporary apartment in the West Loop, looking out at the city lights. The apartment was cramped, with bare walls and minimal furniture, but Logan didn't want to go back to his and Avery's house. He put it up for sale, deciding that he could not live in a place where everything reminded him of the past. "Okay, bro," Madison said, raising her glass of bourbon, "for a clean slate, or at least for it not to be so damn empty." Logan smiled weakly as he clinked glasses with her. "For this," he said, taking a sip. "The liquid burned my throat, but did not warm me. Thank you, Mad. Without you, I would probably go crazy. Fuck, she waved her hand, taking a bite of pizza. You could handle it. You always manage. But damn, Logan, that was shit. All this Avery, Nathan, Mom. How are you holding up? Logan looked out over the city, his fingers tightening around his glass. I don't know, he admitted. I thought divorce would provide some kind of liberation. But I just feel empty. It was as if everything that was important was a lie. Madison nodded, her face becoming more serious. It's normal, she said. You didn't just lose your wife. You have lost faith in people. But you know what? You're still here. And you are not alone. You have me, you have your projects, you have this city. This isn't the end, Logan. This is the beginning. He looked at her, and for a second he wanted to believe that she was right. But the pain was too fresh, too sharp. He nodded but didn't say anything. By the way, Madison changed the subject, her voice becoming lighter. I found out that Keystone Trust is under investigation. The FBI became interested in their schemes. Nathan may have escaped, but he won't hide for long. Okay, Logan said, but his voice was emotionless. He didn't want to think about Nathan. He wanted to forget him, like a bad dream. They sat on the balcony until midnight, talking about little things about her new article, about his skyscraper project, about how she once got stuck in an elevator with a rock star. Logan laughed, but his laugh was mechanical. When Madison left, he remained on the balcony, looking out over the city. Chicago had been his home, but now it felt foreign, as if Logan was a guest in his own life. A week later, Logan moved into a new apartment in the South Loop, closer to his office. It was an open floor plan loft with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows. He bought minimal furniture, a bed, a sofa, a desk, and did not decorate the walls. He didn't want to become attached to this place. He wanted it to just be a space where he could breathe, think, start again. His days became routine: work, meetings with clients, evenings with books, or occasional calls to Madison. He avoided places where he might meet Avery or Catherine. His mother tried to contact him twice, leaving voicemails full of muted irritation and hints of reconciliation. Logan didn't answer. He wasn't ready to forgive her. Perhaps he never would be. One evening, sitting at the table with blueprints for a new project, Logan found himself thinking about Avery. Not about her betrayal, but about how they once laughed at her attempts to cook pasta or how she fell asleep on his shoulder during movies. These memories were like shards of glass, beautiful but sharp. He got up, poured himself some water, and went to the window. The city sparkled as always, but Logan felt separate from it, as if he was looking at the world through a shop window. He knew the pain wouldn't go away quickly. She would return in the silence of the nights, in random songs, in the smell of coffee that reminded them of their mornings. But Logan also knew that he was stronger than this pain. He experienced betrayal, lies, a break with his family. He could survive this too. There was a notepad on the table where he sometimes wrote down thoughts. Logan opened it and wrote, "A clean slate is not the absence of the past. It is the choice to move forward." He looked at the words, closed the notepad, and turned off the light. Tomorrow would be a new day, and he would face it as he had faced every day of his life, with the determination to move on, even if each step was difficult. Thank you for being on the wave of this story. Wherever you listen, at home, on the road, on a walk, you are part of our cozy community. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and write in the comments what topics interest you. Let's hear you. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.